Weeping Willow, based on a true story, by Elizabeth R. Vanderford.
Preface. Weeping Willow is a work of historical fiction inspired by the true and mysterious death of Jessica Renee Johnson of Horn Lake, Mississippi in June 2017. It is shaped by memory, grief, available records, family concerns, media coverage, and the unanswered questions that still surround Jessica's final hours. This story is told through Beth, a best friend of 25 years. Beth is not a detective with a badge. She is a public witness, a keeper of old jokes and late-night secrets, a woman who knows the difference between the file's thin language and the full human being Jessica was. Her grief is intimate, but the story keeps one rule at the center. Feeling is not evidence, rumor is not fact, and suspicion is not a verdict. Some names, dialogue, sequencing, private confrontations, and interior scenes are dramatized or reconstructed for narrative continuity. When the book presents a private meeting, it should be read as historical fiction, shaped from available concerns, family memory, and the documented questions surrounding the case, not as a verbatim transcript. The purpose is not to accuse one person or solve what the available record cannot solve. The purpose is to create reasonable doubt, honor Jessica as a whole person, and challenge the easy cruelty of reducing a complicated life to a convenient ending. At its heart, Weeping Willow is about friendship, stigma, silence, and the stubborn love that refuses to let unanswered questions be buried with the dead. It is also about procedure, who gets protected by it, who gets lost inside it, and what happens when a grieving family turns private pain into a public record. Chapter 1. Under the Weeping Willow. The willow tree bends the same way it did the first time I showed it to Jessica, its long branches trailing across the ground as if reaching for something it had lost. I had brought her there on a sleepless night, back when we were young enough to confuse wreckage with adventure. We had cheap wine in a paper sack, mascara under our eyes, and a talent for laughing at the exact moment crying would have made more sense. Jessica looked up at the leaves trembling in the moonlight and said,
"It's kind of sad, but beautiful too. Like us."
That was Jess. She could point at a broken thing and make it worth keeping. Now I stood under that same tree with mud on my shoes and her name glowing on my phone like a dare from the dead. I did not open the final thread. Not yet. I scrolled back instead, months and years, through screenshots, gossip, apologies, bad decisions, and plans we made with the confidence of women who had no idea how expensive survival could become. There were whole seasons of my life stored in that little glass rectangle. Jess asking if I had mascara. Jess sending a blurry gas station selfie because she wanted to know if her lipstick looked too much, and then immediately texting that she looked hot anyway.
Never mind, I look hot.
That was the trouble with the phone. It did not let the dead stay still. It kept them flickering, bright and careless, one swipe away from breathing. A message from one old summer sat in the middle of the screen.
"You ever think we gonna be old ladies still doing this mess?"
Absolutely. You'll be late to bingo and I'll be mad about it.
"I'm gonna be glamorous, though. Rhinestones on my walker.
Lord help the nursing home."
They gonna love me."
She had believed that, not in a childish way, but in a Jessica way. Stubborn, dramatic, half joking and half declaring war on every bad thing that had ever tried to keep her down. She made plans even when her life was on fire. She talked about tomorrow like it owed her money. That was why the word suicide never sat right in my chest. Not because people who laugh cannot break. I knew better than that. I had seen darkness wear lipstick. I had seen despair laugh at a party and cry in a bathroom 20 minutes later. But with Jess, there were too many pieces that did not line up. Too many unfinished sentences. Too many people suddenly careful with their words, The willow creaked above me, old wood shifting in the dark. Bending, I had learned, looked like weakness to people who did not understand how much force it took not to snap. Jessica had bent for years, for love, for addiction, for shame, for every person who saw her struggle and decided that struggle was the whole story. But bending was not the same as wanting to disappear. I knelt and pressed my palm into the mud at the base of the tree. When I lifted my hand, dark soil clung to my skin like evidence. "I don't know what happened," I whispered, "but I know you were more than what they wrote down." The wind moved through the curtain of leaves. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, then another answered. Life going on, rude and ordinary. Not every unclear thing is useless. Sometimes a blur is where the truth begins. Chapter 2. The Weight of Silence. It's a suspiciously quiet Friday afternoon, quiet enough to make the noise in my mind feel even louder. The bar clock reads 4:53, 7 minutes left on shift. I'm stacking glasses, wiping down the counter for the last time, but my hands are clumsy from nerves. I keep glancing at my phone, hoping for something. I tell myself she's fine. Probably crashed at a friend's place, phone dead, sleeping it off like she's done 100 times. But my gut disagrees, buzzing with the same quiet dread that comes before a storm. By then, Jess's silences had learned how to announce themselves. That morning, even Mama's old lesson about the willow bend, don't break, could not quiet the dread. I had already checked my phone 3 times before lunch. No missed call. No silly complaint. No, I'm 5 minutes away when she had not even left yet. Everyone around me is carrying on like it's any normal Friday. Only I can feel that something in the air has shifted. Jess's silence gnaws at me as I pour drinks and lean into conversations that don't mean much. When my phone finally buzzes, I snatch it up, desperate to see her name. Instead, it's JT.
Is it true?
My heart stutters. I reply, trying to play it cool. Is what true?
Is Jess dead?
Everything in me goes still. The world keeps spinning, beer cooler humming, laughter echoing, but it all feels suddenly wrong, like I've slipped into someone else's life. I stare at that text, waiting for a punchline, an explanation, anything that might make sense. My fingers shake as I text back. What are you talking about? Who told you that? I don't wait for JT's answer. I scroll to Ms. Linda's contact, Jess's mom, and text her, "Please, just tell me Jess is okay." The message sits unread. Before I can let the dread settle, my phone rings. Summer. Summer? I croak, trying not to sound like I'm already crying. Her voice cracks.
Beth, I'm with Ms. Linda. We just found out.
I'd push out the back door, squeezing into the narrow concrete space where the staff goes to smoke. Found out what? My voice comes out sharp, desperate. Silence on the line. Long, awful. And I already know what's coming.
She's gone, Beth.
Summer whispers.
They found her this morning.
For a moment, I can't breathe. No. She just texted me Wednesday night. She said she was coming by. Summer starts crying harder.
I know. Ms. Linda wanted me to call you.
The smell of bleach, the whir of the bar's fridge, the laughter inside. It all fades out. All that's left is the memory of that willow tree. Mama's words about bending, not breaking. But right now, I'm not sure I can do either. Before JT's text, before Summer's call, the afternoon had been full of almosts. Almost 5 o'clock. Almost off work. almost convinced myself Jess was fine. I had spent the last hour checking my phone with the ridiculous secrecy of a teenager waiting on a crush to text back. Every time I wiped down the bar, I turned the screen upward. Every time I walked to the cooler, I glanced at the lock screen. Nothing. No missed call. No voice memo. No dramatic string of messages asking where I was, what I was doing, and why I had not answered fast enough. Jess could ignore you for 3 days and then expect an immediate response like she was the mayor of your nervous system. At 2:14, I had typed, "You still coming by later?" I watched the little word, delivered, sit there like a closed door. At 3:02, I sent, "Jess?" At 4:11, I sent one more, trying to sound annoyed instead of scared. "You better not be making me worry for free." No answer. Brian noticed, because Brian noticed everything behind a bar. Bartenders are part therapist, part referee, part unpaid anthropologist. He leaned against the beer taps and nodded toward my phone.
"You waiting on somebody?"
"No."
"That was quick. Which means yes."
"I'm waiting on my friend to quit being dramatic," he said.
A lifelong appointment.
Normally, I would have laughed. Instead, I folded a towel into a perfect square, unfolded it, and folded it again. "She was supposed to come by," I said.
"Jessica?"
I looked up. "Yeah." Ryan's expression changed the smallest bit. He had seen Jess at the bar enough to know the sparkle and the storm both came with her. She had charmed free cherries out of him once and then announced that the garnish tray lacked presentation. He still called her cherries when she walked in.
"Maybe she's sleeping it off."
He said carefully. "Maybe."
"Maybe her phone died."
"Maybe."
"Maybe Garland."
He stopped himself. The unfinished name hung between us. I hated that his silence said more than his sentence would have. People knew. Not everything, not enough, maybe not anything useful, but they knew the shape of it. The fights, the leaving and returning, the way Jess could defend Garland 1 minute and cry over him the next. In our circle, his name had become weather. You didn't have to explain a storm cloud. You just glanced at the sky and reached for cover. "What?" I asked. Brian held up both hands.
"Nothing. I just know things get messy."
Messy is one word.
"I'm trying to be polite. It's a family establishment."
I looked around at the pool table, the beer signs, and a man arguing with a jukebox. Barely. He smiled, but his eyes stayed serious.
"Call her mom if you're worried."
"I don't want to scare anybody." That was what good girls from Southern families did. We swallowed concern until it became indigestion. We did not want to bother. We did not want to assume. We did not want to make trouble. Trouble, meanwhile, had no such manners. At 4:53, I decided I would call Ms. Linda as soon as I clocked out. I remember that clearly because I felt relief after making the decision, as if a plan could hold back disaster for 7 minutes. Then my phone buzzed. Not Jess. Shaiti.
Is it true?
People think terror is loud. It isn't always. Sometimes it is the tiny click inside your body when hope locks itself from the outside. Chapter 3. Whispers of the Past. I don't remember hanging up. One moment, Summer's sobbing in my ear. The next, I'm staring at the peeling paint behind the bar's back door. The air reeks of bleach and cigarettes. My chest is hollow, and my ears are buzzing, hands clamped around my phone like it's the last thing tethering me to earth. She's gone. That's what Summer said. Just 2 words, and everything inside me froze. The world feels too solid, too bright, like nobody else understands it should be falling apart. The door creaks behind me. One of the kitchen guys pokes his head out.
You good?
I nod. Automatic is breathing. He shrugs and lets the door slam. Alone again. I glance down at my phone. Jess's thread is still open. My last message lingers, desperate. You okay? She never answered. Now she never will. I slide down the wall, the concrete warm against my jeans, grounding and cruel. The memories crowd in, soft at first, then relentless. Last month, Jess and I sat in my old car behind my apartments, windows fogged, passing a bottle we didn't even want. She stared at nothing, chewing her cheek.
He says I'm lucky he puts up with me.
Not the brash, bright Jess everybody knew. That's not love, babe. That's control. I tried, but she just gave me that fake laugh.
You don't get it, Beth. He's all I got.
A week later, after another fight, she texted,
He said he's all I got, but he don't even care for real.
I stared at those words forever. Typed something, erased it, typed again, finally, you always got me. She never replied. Outside, the sun slides down the alley, everything painted gold and orange, like bad things can't happen under that light. But everything bad already has. My phone buzzes. Brandy checking in. You off yet? The words blur through tears I don't remember starting. I want to answer. I want to say yes, but my fingers won't cooperate. All I can do is whisper her name, hoping maybe if I say it soft enough, she'll come back. Jess. It sticks in my throat, small and useless. For the first time, it lands. She's really gone. Later, Bella curled against my legs while morning light thinned across the bedroom. I wanted one more ridiculous voice memo, one more late-night knock, one more chance to tell Jess that Garland was not the whole world. Memory did not bring me only sorrow. It brought the Mid-South Fair. Cotton candy stuck to our fingers, Jess spinning beneath cheap carnival lights, swearing she was going to start over somewhere nobody knew her worst chapter.
Palm trees, big sunglasses, and no drama,
she said. Then she laughed, because even she knew drama followed her like perfume. That was the part I refused to lose. Jessica struggled, yes, but she also planned. She joked, she mothered, she dreamed out loud even when life kept stealing the microphone. By noon, guilt had sharpened into something less helpless. I opened my messages, wrote Summer's name on a scrap of paper, and under it wrote the first question I could bear. Who saw her last? That first night without her, memory became a cruel little projector. It did not play the big scenes in order. It gave me scraps. Jess in my passenger seat, feet on the dashboard, singing like she had won a Grammy no one else knew about. Jess digging through my purse for lip gloss without asking because friendship, according to her, was community property with boundaries we ignore. Jess standing in my kitchen in one of my oversized t-shirts, hair piled on top of her head, making toast at midnight and announcing she was getting her life together starting tomorrow, but tonight needs butter. That was the Jess I wanted everybody to know. Not the flattened version. Not the whispered version. Not the version people use to make themselves comfortable with what happened to her. She was funny in a way that could sneak up on you. One time at the Mid-South Fair, she bought a pair of plastic sunglasses shaped like stars and wore them the rest of the night like she had been personally hired to inspect Joy. She made us ride the Ferris wheel even though I hated heights. When the basket stopped at the top, swaying above all those lights, she grabbed my hand and said,
Look, Beth, we are above the foolishness.
For about 30 seconds, I said,
Then enjoy the elevation.
She said things like, "That's silly," and "wise" by accident. At the top of that wheel, the fair stretched beneath us in glowing circles, rides spinning, children shrieking, music warping through cheap speakers, the smell of sugar and grease rising into the night. Jess looked down at it all with her hair blowing around her face.
I'm gonna leave one day.
She said. The fair?
Mississippi. Drama. Everybody who thinks they know me.
Where are you going?
Somewhere with palm trees.
You hate sand.
I will become a woman who likes sand. People evolve.
I laughed so hard the basket shook, and she clutched the side, cussing me and laughing too. Then, quieter, she said,
I just want my kids to be proud of me. Like, for real proud. Not the kind where they love you because they have to.
I remember that sentence because it was one of the rare moments she let the glitter fall. She was not performing. She was not flirting with the world. She was a mother staring down at carnival lights, wanting to become someone her children could brag about without having to explain the hard parts first. That memory came back after Summer's call and sat beside the word suicide like a witness raising its hand. It did not prove anything. I knew that. Loving your children does not make a person immune to despair. Dreams do not build a locked gate around a mind in pain. But memories matter because they resist lazy conclusions. They make room for complexity. Jess had darkness, yes. She also had future tense. Later that night, Brandy found me on the bathroom floor with the light off. She sat down beside me, back against the tub.
You want water?
I shook my head.
A blanket?
I shook my head again.
Permission to key someone's car?
A laugh broke out of me, ugly and wet.
There she is.
Brandy said softly. Don't make me laugh. It feels wrong.
It isn't wrong. It's air getting in. You're trying to build a staircase out of what-ifs,
Brandy said.
It won't reach her.
I know. But knowing did not loosen the guilt. It kept moving inside me, a snake under leaves. I thought about the last unread messages I had sent. You okay? Jess? You better not be making me worry for free. Later, it would become one of the first real questions. Chapter 4. Beneath the Weeping Willow. On the way to the funeral, Brandy drove because I could not be trusted with a steering wheel and a memory at the same time. The road to the church looked indecently normal. Lawns trimmed, flags drooping in the heat. Men in baseball caps standing at gas pumps. A woman in a minivan fussing at children in the back seat. All of it moving with the calm confidence of a world that had not lost Jess. Brandy kept one hand on the wheel and the other close enough that I could grab it if I needed to. You don't have to read, she said. I told Miss Linda I would. She would understand. I wouldn't. She nodded. That was the end of it. The poem was folded in my lap, creased from being opened and closed too many times. Broken chain. I had practiced it in the bathroom mirror, in the kitchen, in the parking lot of Walgreens while Brandy bought tissues. Every time I made it through 2 lines before my voice cracked like thin ice. Maybe I should ask somebody else, I whispered. Maybe, Brandy said. But you won't. You know me too well. A tragic burden. I carry it bravely. I almost smiled. At the church, the parking lot was already filling with slow-moving cars and people dressed in black who seemed unsure what to do with their hands. Some carried covered dishes. Some carried flowers.
Some carried gossip behind sympathetic faces, because the South can deliver a casserole and a rumor in the same breath. I heard pieces before I ever reached the door. They said it was a mailbox. No, honey, that can't be right. I heard she was with him. Don't say that here. Her daddy doesn't want him coming. Him. They did not have to say Garland's name. It moved through the crowd anyway, invisible and heavy.
The church was already full when I walked in. Soft murmurs, the faint scent of lilies, and that sterile kind of quiet that only grief can make. Jessica's photo sat at the front of the room, her smile bright, frozen in time. I felt my chest tighten. I'd seen that same photo on her Facebook profile 100 times, but now it felt like a lie. Too alive for a room this still. Brandy squeezed my hand before I stepped down the aisle. "You sure you're okay to do this?" she whispered. "I have to," I said, though my voice cracked on the words. Inside, Ms. Linda stood near the front, receiving hugs with the stunned politeness of a woman whose manners had survived what her heart had not. When she saw me, her face folded. I stepped into her arms and felt how hard she was trying not to collapse.
"Thank you for reading,"
she whispered. "I don't know if I can."
"You can,"
she said. Then, after a pause,
"and if you can't, we will stand there with you."
That was the first time I understood the reading was not about performance. It was about witness. My voice did not have to be steady. It only had to arrive. Before the service began, I slipped back outside to the car. The heat hit me like a wet towel. My hands were shaking so badly the paper rattled. I found the little bottle in the glove box, one of those airplane-size vodkas left over from some night when I thought preparedness meant portable poor decisions. For a second, I just stared at it. "Classy, Beth," I muttered. "Very grieving Southern Gothic." Then I opened it and swallowed enough to burn a path through the numbness. I hated myself for needing it. I hated the relief more. When I came back in, Brandy looked at me once and knew. She did not scold me. She only took my hand.
"Stay with me,"
she said. "I'm trying." The sanctuary blurred. Flowers, hymns, the polished wood of the pulpit. Jessica's photograph smiling at all of us from an easel like she had just walked in early for once and was proud of herself. Then my name was called. I stood, paper in hand, and the room turned toward me. Halfway down the aisle, I realized I could not climb those steps alone. Pride fell away. I turned back to the pew. "Summer," I whispered. She stood immediately. Then Sherry, Kayla, Stacy. They joined me without making me ask twice. A small army of trembling women in black. We stood shoulder to shoulder in front of the room, and I thought of Jess at the fair saying we were above the foolishness. Not today, baby, I thought. Today we are knee-deep in it. But we were together. That had to count for something. Truth was, I wasn't okay at all. I'd been sitting in the car outside not 20 minutes earlier, gripping a tiny bottle of vodka I'd found in my glove box. My hands had been trembling so bad I could barely twist the cap. I told myself it was just to take the edge off, to keep from falling apart in front of everyone. But really, it was to numb the part of me that still couldn't accept this was real. I swallowed fast, the burn trailing down my throat like punishment. When they called my name, I thought my knees would give out. I'd been asked to read a poem, Broken Chain by Ron Tranmer. Something simple, something that sounded like goodbye. When as I walked toward the front, the faces blurred together, and all I could see was Jess. Her laugh, her perfect long hair, the way she'd bump my shoulder and say,
Quit crying, you baby.
Lee stood in a small line at the front of the church, the paper shaking in my hand. My voice quivered on the first few words. We little knew that morning that God was going to call your name. The words didn't sound like poetry. They sounded like breaking glass. Summer reached out and touched my shoulder, steadying me. The room seemed to breathe with me then, everyone leaning in as if the act of listening could ease the weight of the words. In life, we loved you dearly. In death, we love you still. Halfway through, I stopped. My throat closed. I pressed a hand to my chest and whispered, "She was my best friend." Kayla slipped her hand into mine, and somehow I found my voice again long enough to finish. When it was over, I sat down, dizzy from grief and vodka. I could feel my insides collapsing. I stared at the casket. White, delicate, too small for a life as loud as hers, and wondered how the world could move on while she lay so still. After the service, people drifted outside in quiet clusters. I lingered near the edge of the crowd, the summer air pressing thick and heavy against my skin. That's when I saw him. Garland. He stood near the steps, head low, his eyes rimmed red. He hadn't been invited. Mr. David had made that clear. "He's not welcome here," he'd said flatly the day before. "Not after what he did." But Garland had come anyway. I saw him slip through a side door earlier, just long enough to look at her one last time. Now he stood by himself, shoulders shaking, hands stuffed in his pockets like a child caught doing something wrong. Mr. David spotted him before anyone else did. His face twisted with rage as he stormed forward. "What the hell are you doing here?" His voice split the stillness. "You don't belong here." Garland froze, tears already streaming down his cheeks. "I just needed to see her," he said quietly, his voice breaking. "I love her." Mr. David's shout carried across the parking lot. "You did this! You hear me? You did this to my daughter!" His words cracked like thunder. "She would still be here if not for you." Gasps rippled through the small crowd. Summer stepped forward, trying to calm him, but grief had turned Mr. David into something unstoppable, a father looking for someone to blame. Garland didn't argue. He didn't even wipe his tears. He just nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "I love her," he repeated. "I needed to see her." Then he turned and walked away, shoulders hunched, disappearing down the gravel road like a shadow fading from the light. The sound of Mr. David's cries followed him, until there was nothing left but silence. I didn't know it then, but that scene, Garland's tears, Mr. David's rage, the whisper of suspicion in every corner of that churchyard, was the beginning of everything that would come next.
Chapter 5. All but one. After Garland disappeared across the parking lot, nobody moved for a few seconds. Not really. People shifted their weight and dabbed tissues beneath their eyes. Someone cleared her throat. A car door slammed somewhere beyond the church, but the air itself held still, thick with heat and lilies, and the kind of shock nobody knows what to do with. Mr. David stood near the church steps, his face red, his chest rising and falling like he had run a mile instead of shouted across a funeral lawn.
"What did you do to my daughter?"
He had screamed. Those words kept echoing inside me. Not, "Why didn't you save her?" Not, "How could you let this happen?" What did you do? There was a difference. A terrible one. Brandy slid her hand into mine.
Beth,
She whispered, soft enough that only I could hear.
come on. Let's get you out of this heat.
But I couldn't stop staring at the spot where Garland had been standing. He had looked smaller than I remembered. Not innocent. Not guilty. Just broken in a way that made the whole scene harder to understand. Tears had rolled down his cheeks, and his voice had cracked when he said,
I love her. I needed to see her.
maybe he did love her. Maybe that was the problem. Love, when twisted the wrong way, could become a locked door, a fist, a chain, a noose made out of somebody else's need. I pressed my palm against my stomach, trying to steady the nausea rising in me. The little shot of vodka I'd swallowed before the service now sat sour and shameful in my throat. There was no long procession to follow. No hearse pulling slowly away. No graveside gathering where people stood in rows beneath the sun and watched the earth take what was left. Jessica had been cremated, and somehow that made the ending feel even stranger. Too quiet. Too clean. Like the world had skipped a step and expected us to keep up. We lingered outside the church anyway, clustered in grief, not ready to leave, and not able to stay. Summer stood nearby with Sherry, Kayla, Stacy, and Bea. Their faces were blotched from crying, their black clothes already wrinkled from heat and heartbreak. We looked like women who had been dropped into the wrong life and told to act natural. Finally, someone said, "We're going to El Portón." I don't remember who said it first. Maybe Summer. Maybe Sherry. Maybe all of us at once, reaching for the only familiar thing we could think of. A table, chips and salsa, sweet tea. Something normal enough to keep us from falling apart. El Portón in Olive Branch had always been one of those places where the world felt casually alive. Families crowded booths. Servers moved fast with hot plates and practiced smiles. The smell of grilled onions, tortillas, and queso hung in the air like comfort trying its best. But when we walked in that afternoon, the brightness of the restaurant felt wrong. The hostess greeted us, then saw our faces and softened. She led us to a long table near the back, the kind meant for birthday dinners and loud families. We sat down like we were attending a meeting none of us had agreed to join. I sat with Brandy close beside me. Summer lowered herself into the chair across from us, quiet for once. Sherry sat near Kayla, keeping one arm around her like she could hold Jessica's sister together by will alone. Stacy slid into the seat beside Bea, both of them red-eyed, exhausted, and silent. A few others drifted in behind us, all of us connected by Jessica. All of us carrying a different version of her. For a while, nobody knew what to say. The server brought baskets of chips and little bowls of salsa. Normally, Jess would have already been complaining that they didn't bring enough cheese dip, then charming somebody into extra napkins, extra limes, extra everything. She had that way about her. Half sweet, half bossy, all sparkle. I stared at the empty space near the end of the table and imagined her there, elbows planted, sunglasses pushed up in her hair. "Y'all are depressing," she would have said. "Somebody order queso before I haunt this whole restaurant." A laugh slipped out of me before I could stop it. Everyone looked up. Then Summer laughed too, watery and broken. Sherry covered her face. Kayla shook her head, crying and smiling at the same time. Bea wiped beneath her eyes and whispered,
"That is exactly what her traumatic self would say."
Stacy gave a shaky laugh.
And then she'd steal everybody's chips like she paid for the whole table.
Just like that, Jessica was with us. Not really, but enough. We started telling stories. Small ones first. Safe ones. Jessica showing up late but acting like time itself had misunderstood her. Jessica dancing in parking lots. Jessica borrowing lip gloss and never giving it back. Jessica saying she was 5 minutes away when she had clearly not left the house. Jessica laughing so hard she snorted, then blaming everybody else for making her ugly laugh in public. B told us about a night when Jess had called her just to sing some ridiculous song into the phone, making up half the words and swearing she was basically famous. B laughed while she told it, but tears slid down her cheeks the whole time.
She could make you mad and make you laugh in the same breath,
B said.
That was her gift.
The memories came easier once they started. They moved around the table like candlelight, touching each of us, warming what grief had made cold. Then, slowly, the laughter thinned, because every story ended the same way. She was here. Now she wasn't. Summer picked at the corner of a napkin until it tore.
I keep thinking about that mailbox.
The table went quiet. I looked at her. She didn't look up.
I'm sorry. I know this isn't the place.
No, Kayla said softly. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were steady.
Say it.
Summer swallowed.
It just doesn't make sense.
No one argued. A waiter passed carrying sizzling fajitas, the skillet hissing loud enough to make me flinch. Around us, the restaurant kept living. Forks scraped plates. Children laughed. Someone at another table clapped because it was somebody's birthday. At our table, Jessica's name sat between the salsa and the untouched cheese dip.
That mailbox?
Sherry said, lowering her voice.
How?
Stacy shook her head.
And shoestrings?
Bea leaned back in her chair, arms crossed tight over her chest.
No, I don't like it. I don't like any of it.
My stomach tightened. Brandy reached beneath the table and found my hand. Kayla stared at the basket of chips like the answer might be buried under the salt.
My sister loved her babies.
Her voice cracked on babies. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then she said it again, quieter.
She loved her babies.
That was the truth nobody could talk around. Addiction had taken pieces of Jessica. Garland had taken pieces. Life had taken pieces, but her children were stitched into the deepest part of her. Even when she was lost, even when she was struggling, even when she was not herself, she loved them. Summer wiped under her eyes.
People keep acting like because she struggled, that explains everything.
It doesn't, I said. The word surprised even me. Everyone looked at me. I felt Brandy's hand tighten around mine. It doesn't, I repeated, stronger this time. Jess had problems, we all know that, but problems don't answer every question. They don't explain a mailbox. They don't explain Garland sneaking into the funeral after Mr. David told him not to come. They don't explain why this feels so wrong. Saying it out loud changed something. At the church, suspicion had been a whisper. At El Portón, beneath the bright lights and painted walls, it became a thing with shape. Summer leaned closer.
Miss Linda doesn't believe it either.
I know, I said.
She told me she won't let them just write Jessica off.
Kayla's jaw tightened.
They better not.
Bea nodded slowly.
Because that's what people do. They hear addiction and stop asking questions.
Her words landed hard. I looked around the table at the women gathered there, Brandy, Summer, Sherry, Kayla, Stacy, Bea, and the others who had loved Jessica in their own ways. And I realized we were not only mourning her, we were becoming witnesses. Not the same kind. Summer had the memory for dates and who said what. Brandy had the patience to sort fear from fact. Kayla carried the family's ache like a live wire. Sherry noticed when somebody changed a detail. Bea heard rumor before it turned into a story people believed. Even Stacy, quiet as she was, had a way of asking one soft question that made a whole table stop pretending. Maybe we did not know what happened yet. Maybe all we had were questions, rumors, fragments, and the sick feeling that something about the official story sat crooked. But Jessica had been loved. And love, real love, does not always arrive soft. Sometimes it shows up with red eyes, clenched fists, and a receipt from the Mexican restaurant in Olive Branch because nobody knew where else to go after the world ended. The server came back gently.
Y'all need anything else?
For a second, nobody answered. Then Stacy sniffed and said,
More queso.
The whole table broke, laughing, crying, shaking our heads. Because yes, Jess would have wanted more queso. And maybe that was how we survived the first meal without her, by ordering what she would have ordered, laughing where she would have laughed, and finally saying the thing everyone had been afraid to say. Something was wrong, and we were not going to pretend it wasn't. Not because we were hungry. Nobody was hungry in a normal way. We ate because hands need jobs when hearts are out of work. We broke chips, stirred salsa, folded napkins into tiny squares, pushed plates around like rearranging the table could rearrange the day. The restaurant lights were too bright. The walls were painted in cheerful colors that felt almost rude. Somewhere near the front, a little boy dropped a spoon and wailed as if his own small world had ended. His mother shushed him, embarrassed. I wanted to tell her not to bother. Let him cry. At least children are honest about disaster. Summer sat with her elbows on the table, eyes swollen, mascara smudged beneath them. Kayla kept looking toward the door like Jessica might still come in late, making a grand entrance and demanding to know why everybody was being weird.
She would hate this,
Kayla said.
The crying?
Sherry asked.
The attention she wasn't here to control.
That got us. A real laugh moved around the table, soft at first, then stronger.
She would have corrected the picture they used,
Stacy said.
She would have said, out of all my selfies, y'all picked that one?
She would haunt whoever chose it,
Bea said. Professionally, I added, with follow-up emails. For a few minutes, we let her be ridiculous again. We let her be vain and funny and bossy and late. We let her exist outside the final scene everybody kept whispering about. Then Kayla said,
Daddy meant what he said.
The laughter faded. Mr. David's voice seemed to enter the restaurant with her sentence. What did you do to my daughter? Kayla stared down at her hands.
He has not slept. Mama either. They keep going over it. The mailbox, the shoestrings, the way they said it so quick, like it was simple. Did anybody say why no one saw her?
Summer asked. Kayla shook her head.
That's what bothers Mama. That house wasn't in the middle of nowhere. People were there. People always see something when it doesn't matter. Let your trash can blow into the street and 3 neighbors know by breakfast. But this? Nobody saw?
B leaned forward.
Small towns only go blind when seeing costs them something.
Nobody answered, because nobody wanted to agree, and everybody did. Brandy, who had been quiet, took a napkin and drew a line down the center with a pen from her purse. "What are you doing?" I asked.
Making your brain less feral?
"Good luck. Many have tried." She wrote at the top of one side, "Known." At the top of the other, questions. It looked absurd on a restaurant napkin beside salsa stains, but everyone leaned in.
Known,
Brandy said.
Jessica is gone. Officially, they are saying suicide. She was found at a mailbox. There were shoestrings. She had been with or near Garland and others.
Kayla flinched at the word suicide, but did not stop her.
Questions,
Brandy continued.
Height of the mailbox. Strength of the shoestrings. Who was at the house? Who saw her last? Whether the phone matters. Whether there are pictures. Whether the family can get records.
"Phone?" I asked. Summer's eyes lifted to Kayla's. Something passed between them. It was quick, but I saw it. A door closing. Or opening. "What about her phone?" I repeated. Kayla pressed her lips together.
Mama said there was a text to one of the kids early that morning.
The table seemed to tilt.
What kind of text?
Brandy asked.
I don't know everything,
Kayla said quickly.
I just know Mama thinks it's important.
Summer nodded.
We shouldn't talk about it here.
That sentence changed the temperature more than anything else had. We shouldn't talk about it here. Still, from that moment on, the table lowered its voice. Brandy folded the napkin and slid it toward me.
Keep this,
she said. It's covered in salsa.
So is half the truth in Mississippi. Keep it anyway.
I tucked it into my purse. Later, I would transfer those words into a notebook. Later, I would learn more about the 329 text, the locked phone, the missing autopsy, the photographs, the bruises, and the way a low mailbox could become the center of a family's disbelief. But the first record was a napkin. Known. Questions. And in between them, Jessica's empty chair. Chapter 6. The Message at 3:29. Summer came over the next morning carrying a folder, 2 coffees, and the haunted look of somebody who had not slept. Bella met her at the door first, tail wagging like she had been appointed chairwoman of the welcome committee. Summer bent to pet her, but her hand shook against Bella's fur. At least somebody in this house still believes in joy, Summer said. Bella is committed to morale, Brandy said. The rest of us are under review. We sat at my kitchen table, the same scarred table where Brandy and I paid bills, ate takeout, and argued about whether coffee counted as breakfast. Summer placed the folder between us and opened it like a person opening a wound. I do not have everything, she said, but I have enough to know the first question. She slid one printed screenshot across the table. The final message sat there in black letters. Spending the day with G. The timestamp read 3:29 a.m. For a moment, nobody moved. To her son? I asked. Summer nodded. The words looked harmless until they didn't. They sounded casual. Too casual. Jess might have been scattered, late, furious, reckless, funny, impossible. But when she texted her children, she softened. She added love. She added reassurance. This read like a label someone had tied around her absence. Brandy pulled a legal pad toward herself. We are not deciding what it means. We are deciding what it requires. It requires the phone, I said. Summer looked at the folder. That is the problem. The phone had been found near Jessica's open purse. It could have held the last calls, the last messages, the location trail, the names of the people who had her attention before dawn. But by the time the family understood what had been missed, the device had become a locked room. Ms. Linda asked about using her fingerprint, Summer said. Before rigor set in, before the body was out of reach. They told her no. Privacy, procedure, warrant. Whatever word got them out of doing it right then. Brandy wrote one line across the top of the page. What did the phone know? Then she drew 3 columns. Message, device, consequence. Under message, she wrote 3:29 a.m. text. Under device, she wrote locked, not opened at scene. Under consequence, she paused. I said it for her. The timeline becomes whatever people remember later. That was the first true consequence. Not theory, not accusation. Procedure had failed to preserve the one witness that might have spoken without fear. I reached for the screenshot and forced myself to read the words again. Spending the day with G. There are 3 possibilities, Brandy said. Jess sent it. Jess was made to send it. Or someone else sent it. Summer pressed both hands over her mouth. We do not know which, Brandy added quickly. That matters. It did. Grief wanted certainty because certainty gave pain a target. But Jessica deserved better than my anger pretending to be proof. I wrote beneath Brandy's columns. Who physically had the phone at 3:29? Who knew the passcode? Who benefited from the message sounding ordinary? Outside the kitchen window, the day had the nerve to be beautiful. Sunlight moved across the sink. Bella lay under the table with her chin on Brandy's shoe. Somewhere beyond our walls, people were getting dressed for work, buying gas, complaining about traffic. Ordinary life kept marching with its little tin drum. Inside, we had one sentence, one timestamp, and one locked phone. It was enough to move us from mourning into method. No Facebook posts, Brandy said. No naming people online. No turning a question into a headline. We build the record first. Summer nodded. Ms. Linda wants that. A record. Something nobody can pretend she imagined. I opened the notebook I had started after El Portón. The first page still smelled faintly of salsa from the napkin I had tucked inside it. Known. Questions. I turned to a clean page and wrote Jessica's name at the top. For the first time since the call, my hand stopped shaking.
Chapter 7. The Evidence Ledger. Ms. Linda's refrigerator hummed so loudly that afternoon, it seemed to be doing the crying for all of us. We sat around her kitchen table with one folder, 2 photographs, 1 copied scene description, and a pair of Jessica's heels lying between us like testimony. Ms. Linda had taken them from the closet before I arrived. They were the kind Jess loved, high, impractical, dramatic, and proud of themselves.
She lived in shoes like that,
Ms. Linda said, resting her palm over the heel as if it were a wrist with a pulse.
That girl would wear wedges to take the trash out.
I looked at the copied scene summary again. The numbers had no mercy. Mailbox, 38 inch. Jessica, 5'1". Position, kneeling or squatting. Ligature, shoelaces. Purse, open between her knees. Those details had already been spoken in pieces at El Portón, at the funeral, in whispers at the edge of rooms. But this was the first time they sat together in one place without interruption. Once lined up, They stopped sounding strange and started sounding impossible. Brandy slid the legal pad to the center of the table.
One ledger,
She said.
not 12 conversations. One page we can hand to anybody.
That was the mercy of her mind. Mine wanted to circle the horror until I wore a trench in the floor. Brandy wanted a page. We titled it, Known Questions. Not facts pretending to be verdicts. Not grief dressed up as science. Questions with roots. 1. How does a 5'1" woman fatally hang from a 38-inch mailbox while kneeling low enough to remain in tension? 2. Why shoelaces when Jessica rarely wore sneakers and was known for heels? 3. Why was her purse open between her legs, intact and exposed? 4. Who had the phone when the 3:29 a.m. message was sent? 5. Why was the device not opened at the scene when time-sensitive access may have been possible? 6. What caused the geometric pattern on her left forearm? 7. Did toxicology explain her state, or did it become an excuse to stop asking physical questions? Ms. Linda read the list without blinking. Mr. David stood near the sink, a glass of water untouched in his hand.
They sat on that sofa.
He said finally, his voice low.
Told us it was suicide, like they were telling us the mail had come.
No one answered. He looked at the heels on the table.
She would have fussed about those shoes being out without permission.
The smallness of it broke me harder than the official language had. A dead woman can be argued over until she becomes a case, a cautionary tale, a debate. A pair of heels returns her to herself. Ms. Linda folded the ledger once and then unfolded it.
If we take this to them again, they will say we are grieving.
We are, I said. But this is not grief. This is geometry. The sentence stayed there, plain as a nail. We made 3 copies before I left. One for Ms. Linda, one for Kayla, one for me. I tucked mine into the notebook beside the El Portón napkin. The napkin had been the beginning. Known. Questions. The ledger was the next step. Consequence. Now every conversation would have to answer the page.
Chapter 8. The Arm Photograph. Detective Miller kept me waiting long enough for the waiting to become the point. The lobby of the Horn Lake Police Department smelled of floor wax and old coffee. A television bolted in the corner played a morning show with the sound off. Behind the glass partition, a woman answered phones in the careful tone of somebody trained to keep emergencies from becoming hers. When Miller finally came out, he did not apologize.
Beth,
he said, as if my name were paperwork he had already processed. This scene is reconstructed from the notes I wrote afterward and the request list I carried in my purse until the creases split. I remember the room clearly. Beige walls, metal table, 2 chairs, and a smell like old toner. I remember my own hand shaking when I placed the evidence ledger between us. Miller glanced at it.
we have reviewed the family's concerns.
Then review the request, I said. I slid 1 typed page across the table. Brandy had helped me reduce every argument to 4 lines, because officials could dodge grief, but it was harder to dodge a numbered list. 1. Photograph and compare the patterned injury on Jessica's left forearm against footwear impressions. 2. Swab and process the mailbox post and shoelaces as potential homicide evidence. 3. Seek immediate forensic extraction of the phone and preserve provider records connected to the 3:29 a.m. message. 4. Canvass nearby cameras and neighbors for the hours before the mail carrier's discovery. Miller read the list without moving his lips. Then I laid down the photograph. Jessica's left forearm filled the page. The patterned injury stood out in hard, dark lines, a cross-hatched grid that did not look like grass, chance, or insects. It looked pressed. For 1 second, Miller's face changed. A blink held half a beat too long. His mouth tightened before he remembered not to let it. "What do you call that?" I asked.
I am not a medical examiner.
"Then send it to someone who is. Send it to someone who can say on paper that this is not a boot impression." He folded his hands.
The cause of death was asphyxiation due to ligature hanging. Toxicology showed significant methamphetamine and alprazolam. The scene was consistent with self-inflicted injury.
There it was. The official sentence, clean as a sealed envelope. I tapped the list. I'm not asking you to solve it in this room. I'm asking you to test what can still be tested.
Testing requires an investigative basis.
The basis is on her arm. The room went still. Miller looked at the photograph again. He did not touch it this time. That was the reaction I carried out with me later. Not belief, not doubt, but caution. He knew the image had weight. "Will you write down that the family requested those 4 actions?" I asked. He reached for a departmental memo pad and wrote slowly. I watched the words appear in blocky blue ink. Family requests comparison of arm mark, mailbox processing, phone extraction, additional canvas. Below it, after a pause, he added, "No change in classification at this time." "That is not an answer," I said.
It is the answer I can give you.
Because the evidence is weak? Or because changing the first day makes the first day look bad? His jaw flexed. The polite face dropped just enough for me to see the door behind it.
This meeting is over.
I stood with the ledger, the photograph, and the memo note folded into my notebook. Fear met me in the parking lot, hot and immediate. But anger walked beside it. Public witness was not only speaking loudly. Sometimes it was carrying out a dated refusal and knowing that, one day, the refusal itself would have to answer. Chapter 9. The Media Line. The WMC Action News 5 newsroom in Memphis did not feel like rescue. It felt like risk with fluorescent lights. Phones rang. Police scanners muttered. Producers crossed the floor with cups of coffee and the permanent expression of people late to 3 things at once. Kayla walked beside me with a black portfolio hugged to her chest, her face set in a calm I knew was expensive. Mark Thomas, the investigative reporter, met us at a desk crowded with legal pads and old press badges. He looked at the folder before he looked at our faces.
"I know why you're here,"
he said.
"I also know why this is difficult. If we question a department's ruling on air, we need more than outrage. We need documents, images we can verify, and a family willing to have Jessica's struggles discussed publicly."
Kayla's hand tightened around the portfolio.
"They already made her struggles public,"
she said.
"They just did it without her humanity."
Mark did not soften. Maybe he could not afford to.
"You understand what happens after a broadcast. The department may push back. Viewers may say cruel things. People online will tear apart every photograph, every word, every choice your family made. Once this leaves the room, you don't control it."
That was the friction the detective's office had not offered. Miller had been a wall. Mark was a door with a warning nailed to it. I looked at Kayla. For one breath, she looked younger than she had all week. Then she unzipped the portfolio and laid out the evidence ledger, the 329 screenshot, the mailbox measurement, and the arm photograph.
"We know,"
she said.
"Run it anyway."
Mark picked up the arm photo by its edges. Under the desk lamp, the pattern looked even more deliberate.
Who took this?
Family,
Kayla said.
before preparation.
Do you have the original file?
Yes.
Scene description?
I handed him the copy.
Phone records?
Not enough, I said. That's part of the story. The phone was there. It was not opened when immediate access might have mattered. Mark made a note.
I will not say murder unless I can support it.
We are not asking you to, I said. We are asking you to ask why suicide became easier than testing the evidence. That finally made him look up. The newsroom noise went on around us. Ringing phones, printer trays, the low hiss of a scanner dispatching somebody else's disaster. Mark tapped his pen once against the ledger.
If we do this,
he said,
we lead with the questions, not the theory. The public sees the metric, the message, the photo, and the refusal. Then we ask the department for response. On camera.
Will the answer?
Kayla asked. Mark's mouth tightened.
They may issue a statement. They may accuse your family of exploiting grief. They may threaten legal review.
Let them,
Kayla said. A producer stopped behind Mark and glanced at the photographs. Her expression changed in a way I would remember later. Not shock exactly, but recognition. The look of someone who understood that a story had just crossed from rumor into record. Mark closed the portfolio.
Tomorrow morning,
he said.
Bring Linda if she is willing. Bring only what you can stand to defend.
On the drive back across the state line, Kayla sat silent, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. We just opened a door, I said.
No,
she answered.
We rang a bell. Doors can close. Bells keep sounding.
Chapter 10. The District Attorney's File. The DeSoto County District Attorney's Office looked designed to make ordinary people lower their voices. Dark wood, framed degrees, legal books no one had opened in years, but everyone respected anyway. The broadcast had aired the night before, and by morning, the department had released a statement standing by the original classification. It used the word tragic twice. It used Jessica's name once. That was why we were there. The district attorney did not offer coffee. He did not invite us to sit until Miss Linda sat anyway, lowering herself into the chair across from him with the dignity of a queen claiming land. Kayla placed the black portfolio on his desk.
This is the public record we have assembled,
she said.
The question is whether your office intends to examine it or merely outlast it.
Inside were the ledger, the arm photograph, the 329 message notes, the phone access request, the weather summary, and Miller's own memo showing what we had asked his department to test. The DA opened the folder. His face gave away less than Miller's had, but his fingers paused on the arm image.
I understand this has been extremely painful,
he began. Miss Linda lifted one hand.
Do not comfort me before you answer me.
The sentence cut through the room cleanly. The DA leaned back.
The medical findings support ligature asphyxiation. Toxicology is relevant. Without definitive evidence of another person's involvement, reopening or reclassifying is a high legal threshold.
Then put the threshold in writing, I said. Tell us exactly what your office will not do. For the first time, the room belonged to the question. Kayla opened the portfolio to a blank page we had prepared before we arrived.
Will your office order independent comparison of the arm pattern?
No, not at this time.
Will you direct forensic processing of the mailbox or ligature?
Not based on the current classification.
Will you seek phone extraction or provider preservation connected to the 329 message?
He removed his glasses and set them on the desk.
The window for some of that has likely passed.
It passed while they were calling it suicide,
Kayla said. No one spoke for several seconds. The old office clock ticked above a shelf of Mississippi codes. All that steady time in a room where Jessica's final hours had been handled loosely enough to slip through official fingers. The DA closed the folder, but did not slide it back.
I will review the materials,
he said. It was not promise. It was a sentence built to survive being quoted later. Miss Linda stood.
Review them like she was your daughter. Not like she was a problem already filed away.
His eyes dropped. A small crack in the polished surface. Not guilt, maybe not doubt, but impact. Outside, cameras waited at the edge of the parking lot because Mark had told them we were coming. The DA's office had wanted quiet. We had brought witnesses. A reporter asked if the meeting would change anything. Kayla stepped to the microphone with the blank page now filled by the office's refusals.
We do not know what they will do,
she said.
But now everyone knows what we asked, when we asked it, and what they declined.
That became the headline by 6 o'clock. Chapter 11. Beth Comes Apart. Public witness sounded noble until it came home with me and sat in the dark. After the broadcast, my living room became a place people avoided. Not because it was haunted, though it nearly was, but because every surface carried paper. The coffee table held copies of the ledger. The floor held weather printouts. The wall above the couch held a timeline Brandy called The Shrine exactly once before my face made her regret it. I stopped sleeping first. Then I stopped eating unless someone put food in front of me and stared until I took a bite. Then I stopped answering ordinary questions.
Do you want tacos?
Brandy asked one night. The department statement says no additional evidence, I said. She stood in the doorway with her keys in her hand.
Beth, tacos. Food with a shell. Familiar concept.
I looked down at the papers in my lap and realized I had no idea what time it was. Brandy came over and lifted the folder gently from my hands.
Jessica is gone,
she said. The words struck like a slap. Don't.
But you are not, and I am trying to keep you from crawling into that file after her.
My first instinct was anger, because anger was easier than hearing love. You think I should stop?
I think you should breathe before the work eats every part of you that Jessica loved.
That did what no official statement had done. It silenced me. Jessica had loved the ridiculous parts. The laughing too loud. The last-minute plans. The car singing. The way I could make a joke in the middle of disaster and annoy everyone back into breathing. The investigation had not made those things stronger. It had packed them away. I went to the bathroom and locked the door. For a while, I sat on the floor with my back against the tub, exactly where Brandy had found me after the funeral. Only this time, I did not cry. I opened my phone and found an old video from a Rock 103 event. Jess in heels. Jess with a clipboard. Jess blowing a kiss at the camera and shouting,
Bethy, quit filming, it'll help me look important.
I laughed once, then covered my mouth. Grief had taught me that laughter could feel like betrayal. But it was also evidence. Evidence that she had lived louder than the file allowed. When I came out, Brandy was sitting on the bed with 2 tacos and a glass of water.
You still mad?
She asked. A little.
Good. Eat with feeling.
I sat beside her and took the taco. We did not fix anything that night, but I let the folder stay closed until morning. That counted. Chapter 12. The Digital Town Square. The internet did not arrive like justice. It arrived like weather. At first, there were a few posts, then comments, then private messages. Then screenshots of screenshots, measurements circled in red, strangers debating the mechanics of a 38-inch mailbox as if they were standing in the ditch themselves. When True Crime Garage covered Jessica's case, the private ache of one family crossed into a national room. Thousands of people listened to the timeline, the 329 message, the phone, the arm photograph, the open purse, the toxicology. Some were careful, some were cruel. Some wanted answers. Some wanted entertainment, wearing a detective hat. I learned quickly that public attention is not the same as public care. One thread called Jessica a tragic addict before the second paragraph. Another broke down the body position with more respect than any official report I had seen. A woman from Oregon sent a diagram of partial suspension mechanics. A retired nurse wrote that she could not stop thinking about the arm pattern. A man with a skull avatar accused the family of wanting fame. Kayla read that one at Ms. Linda's table and went very still. "Do not answer him," I said.
I wasn't going to.
"Your face says you were fixing to baptize him in gasoline." She almost smiled. Instead of arguing with strangers, we built a clean page. Dates, documents, questions, and a note at the top reminding readers that Jessica was a person, not a puzzle. We included what was documented, what was family memory, and what had been dramatized or reconstructed in public conversation. It did not stop the noise. Nothing stops noise once it learns your name. But it gave us a place to point. This mattered more than I expected. The record had begun as a napkin, then a notebook, then a ledger, then a broadcast. Online, it became harder for the official version to stand alone. Not because strangers solved the case, they did not, but because every repetition of the questions made the easy story less easy. The department could still say suicide. The state could still leave the file unchanged. But now the word had to stand beside the measurements. And once a word has witnesses around it, it can no longer pretend to be the whole truth. Chapter 13. The Angel Drive Vigil. The night of the vigil, the 7500 block of Angel Drive held its breath. 60 people lined the grassy shoulder with white candles cupped in their hands. The ditch was thick with summer growth. The mailbox stood low and ordinary at the edge of it, terrible in its plainness. A thing made for letters had become the symbol of everything left unanswered. WMC's van parked near the bend. A police cruiser idled farther down the road, blue lights flashing without siren, washing the faces of mourners in brief, cold color. Ms. Linda stood beside Mr. David, one hand in his, the other holding a candle so steady the flame hardly moved. Kayla stood next to me with the ledger folded in her pocket. I stepped to the small microphone Mark's crew had set up and looked at the neighbors standing on porches, half hidden in shadows. Some had come close. Others watched from behind screens. In a small town, even compassion checks who is looking. "We are not here to solve what the state will not examine," I said. "We are here to say Jessica's name where the record went quiet." The microphone made my voice sound braver than I felt. "We asked about the phone. We asked about the message. We asked about the mailbox, the purse, the marks on her arm, the speed of the ruling. We asked for testing. We asked for review. If the answer is still no, then let the no be public." Kayla stepped up beside me. She did not cry. That made it harder for everyone else not to.
"My sister was not a headline,"
she said.
"She was not a chemical result. She was not a rumor. She was a daughter, a sister, a mother, a friend. She worked, she laughed, she fought sickness. She loved us. Whatever happened here, the least the world owes her is the whole question."
The candles flickered. For a few seconds, nothing moved but fire. Then Ms. Linda lifted her candle higher. One by one, the others followed. The road filled with small lights, stubborn and human, refusing the dark its full authority. Behind the camera, Mark lowered his clipboard. The police cruiser stayed where it was. That was fine. We were not waiting for permission anymore. Chapter 14. What we could prove. A week after the vigil, the district attorney's office issued another statement. It was 3 paragraphs long. It expressed sympathy, affirmed confidence in existing agencies, and stated that no new definitive evidence had been presented sufficient to alter the manner of death. No new definitive evidence. I read the phrase at my kitchen table with Brandy beside me and Kayla on speakerphone. The notebook lay open between my elbows. The El Porto napkin had grown soft at the folds.
They mean no confession,
Kayla said.
They mean no body left to answer,
Brandy said quietly. I placed the statement behind the ledger and then behind Miller's memo and the DA refusal page. For a while, I had believed the right arrangement of facts could force the right response. Geometry, time, weather, photograph, phone. They had looked. Then they had chosen the smaller door. That was the grief after grief. Learning that being heard and being answered are not the same thing. But the statement did something the office did not intend. It created a date. So did Miller's memo. So did the DA's answers. Together they formed a procedural note sharper than any speech I could give. Requested. Arm pattern comparison. Denied. Requested. Mailbox and ligature testing. Denied. Requested. Phone extraction and preservation of digital records. Deferred until the useful window had narrowed. Requested. An answer that fit the whole scene. Not provided. I did not write those lines with triumph. I wrote them because a record is sometimes the only grave marker truth gets. Mark called that evening.
This keeps the story alive,
he said.
Their statement gives us the next segment.
More pain as content, I said before I could stop myself. He was quiet.
Only if you let it be content. It can also be history.
I hated that he was right. That night, I rewrote the first page of the notebook. Not the evidence ledger, not the questions. The first page. Jessica Renee Johnson was 37 years old. She was a mother. She was a daughter. She was Kayla's sister. She was my best friend for 25 years. She worked promotions in Memphis, made strangers laugh, wore heels like battle flags, and believed a bad chapter did not get to become the whole book. Then I wrote what we could prove. We could prove that the official answer left questions. We could prove that her family asked those questions clearly. We could prove that officials declined to act on specific requests. We could prove that the public heard her name without the state's shorthand swallowing it whole. We could prove that Jessica was loved past the point where silence would have been easier. It was not enough. It was also not nothing. Chapter 15. Where the Willow Roots. The willow tree bent in the evening wind, long branches trailing the ground like green ribbons from an old funeral dress. I had come alone, though alone was not what it used to be. Jessica came with me now in fragments, a laugh under my ribs, a text I could not delete, a memory of star-shaped sunglasses at the fair, the smell of cheap body spray near a Rock 103 van, her voice telling me not to let the hard days change who we were. The case had not opened the way we wanted. No courtroom, no confession, no neat last chapter where the locked room unlocks and truth walks out clean. Real life is rude that way. It leaves dishes in the sink and questions in folders. But the story had changed. Not the death certificate, not the official line. Those remained hard, cold things. The change happened elsewhere, in kitchens, newsrooms, comment threads, candlelight, and in the way people said Jessica's name after they learned there was more than one word in the file. My phone buzzed. Kayla had sent a photo from Linda's house. The old Rock 103 shirt folded beside Jessica's heels. Under it, she had written, "She would say we picked the wrong angle." I laughed out loud under the willow. "She absolutely would," I said to the leaves. The wind moved through the branches, soft as breath. For so long, I had thought justice meant making someone powerful change a form. Maybe sometimes it does. Maybe that is the justice everyone deserves and too few people get. But there is another kind, smaller and stubborn as a root under concrete. Jessica was not saved by our questions. That truth would always hurt. But she was carried by them. Out of the ditch, out of the shorthand, out of the cruel little box where people tried to place her after death because life had been complicated. I knelt at the base of the willow and pressed my palm into the dirt. "I still don't know everything," I whispered. "But I know this. You were here. You mattered. And we made them look." The tree bent lower, not broken, never broken, its roots holding deep in the dark. Sometimes that is how love survives. It keeps bending toward the truth.